it's like you can tell when there's genuine love in a recipe. You can really tell when there's, and also that there's these little techniques that you put in that really make, it's going to make a difference using cold water to make that pie crust. It really is,
Well, and little things, what someone else pointed out to me is I'm the first person to write Hap and Leonard other than my father. So
that's true.
I didn't really think about it, but it is true because I just wanted to take over and have that voice. And what I really just did was the voice of my Granny Rita, the voice of my dad, the voice of what I believe my grandfather would have sounded like if I'd have known him, and just from the stories that I've heard. And it was just sort of that, this is from the family. And I wanted it to feel like that because it was. And some of them are true recipes and some of them are just fun things that we put together. And, one of my favorites is taco mess, and that's just something that I would throw together and I'd do meal prep on taco mess like 2 weeks out of the month because it was easy and it was delicious. It was high protein. I mean, that was sort of my goal on this is what is the easiest thing we can make? What are people like me able to make? So if I can make it, anybody can make it. And we actually did some videos of me cooking these recipes for Tachyon that is on their YouTube channel.
Oh, I'll link that in the notes.
Oh my God, you need to watch it because there's nothing funnier than watching me try to tell people how to cook. And I'm like, pick up the stick with the pointy end and because I don't know the official names. All I know is what I heard growing up and what I've heard since and the recipes and the things that have been handed down. So if nothing else, it was yet another opportunity to have an homage to my family and to be able to have that imprint forever, and that's important to me, the legacy of not just my dad, but of my whole family. We all are part of this unit and it takes each of us to keep the machine cog, moving forward.
Now I'm reading the Kill You Dead jalapeno cornbread recipe, and I for 30 years have made a jalapeno cornbread stuffing that first learned the recipe from my friend Scott Finger and David Hughes at their house for Thanksgiving. And you have a quote from Twain that says, "The North thinks it knows how to make cornbread, but this is gross superstition." I take offense to that, as I did learn the tradition of soul food from a woman by the name of Chef Laverne, who taught me a lot of really great things. But it's true. If you don't get taught by somebody from down south, man, you don't really learn how to make soul food unless you're actually. Well, that's not true. What am I talking about? There's so many great fucking soul food places in New York,
But you know what? A lot of them probably had Southern grannies. I'm sticking with that.
I'm sure. I mean, Sylvia's, 100%. But I'm reading this recipe and it says, 1 tablespoon shortening, 1 cup of cornmeal, 1 slight teaspoon salt, 1 cup of boiling water, jalapenos to taste, ample bacon grease. Just use what's in the Folgers can on the back of the stove. And ample can be defined as how much grease your body can handle today.
That's right. Because you know what? That it varies day to day, and I think we can all attest to that.
So, I was going to say that I don't have my bacon grease in a coffee can. I actually have it in a coffee cup I was given by Comic Verse after they did an interview with Bob Camp at a convention.
Hey, wherever you keep your bacon grease, I used to think that was the grossest thing. I'd see that on the back of the stove and think, my God. And now I think, oh my God, if I just had more bacon grease on the back of the stove, because that's the secret.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta, I use it all the time. And if not bacon grease, like when I'm doing like a pork shoulder or something like that, I'll keep the, I'll skim the fat off the stock and save that for later. And also the other recipe I was going to mention that is just really outstanding in this is the hot sauce recipe. Is just, classic Southern style vinegar hot sauce. I love that so much.
Thanks. Yeah, that was, you know what? It was a lot of fun. It was a really neat to do that, and neat to kind of step into that voice, and neat to put all that in a place that, because the other side of that is I do recipes and I move on and forget. So now I can go back and look at those too for when the time comes.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to help me edit my cookbook as I'm progressively working on it. So I might have to pester
Hey, I'm at
you.
your service.
Awesome. That's excellent.
I'm at your service.
All right. So now, what are you watching or reading or listening to at home?
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to be honest, not much right now because we literally just moved. And so everything is in a box. We just moved. So I have all of my books are in a box. We did get the TV set up, but we haven't watched anything. I did watch right before we moved. I started watching it's not great, but it's interesting. It's like a little docu-series on the hotel in downtown LA, Hotel Cecil or Cecil, depending on
which is one of the most haunted locations, right?
Yeah, and that's interesting, and that kind of spawned some things. But that was the last thing I watched. Again, it's worth it. It's worth checking out. It's not earth shattering. I did just finish Flood by Andrew Vax.
Oh,
and
God,
that was
such
fantastic.
A good book.
Such a good book. And
is
and
that
it was
your
such
first
a
time
weird,
reading it, or
it's my first time reading it because to me he's Uncle Andrew.
Yeah.
And I finally thought, well, let me see what this hubbub's about, right?
Oh,
and
God,
I read it and I was like,
just reading.
Holy shit!
You're just reading the Burke books. Oh, Kasey,
yeah, just now.
Yeah. Oh,
and it's fantastic.
It's so good. It's your Andrew Vax. For those that don't know, Andrew Vax is Kasey's dad, one of Kasey's father's best friends. They refer to each other as brothers. And he is the author of a series of novels that feature a character named Burke, who grew up in the system, who was an orphan, basically born into the system, and has a family of other career criminals that he basically he's kind of like private eye grifter vengeance dude. I
mean it's just so well done and so beautifully written, and that was his first Burke novel. So my nature is I have to start at the beginning and read all the way through. So I read that and thought, my God, if that's the first novel that you wrote, I can only imagine what's gone from there. Because, I have copies of the other, that's how I roll, and some of the more recent ones. But, it's different when you read them in order, and it's just so beautifully done. And then I actually, the other book I just finished, well, I didn't just finish, but recent-ish, was The Dime by Kathleen Kent. And I had read her first one, The Burn, or maybe it was I think I'm doing it backwards. The Burn and the Dime was first, then The Burn, and both fantastic. And she has a new one with the same protagonist, the Detective Betty, coming out soon. So that's kind of been recent-ish, but the most recent was the Andrew Vax novel, The Flood.
Yeah, that's such a good book, and strangely very similar to the Hap and Leonard books. I love the first one, Savage Season, but I think that really Mucho Mojo is superior. And
I finally went back and read all my dad's stuff during this period. Well, not all my dad's stuff because, my God, I have to sleep. But I read all the Hap and Leonards, and it was an emotional journey for me because, starting from Savage Season to the most recent one, I think it was Elephant of Surprise. I don't have it all in front of me, but
yeah,
I remember where we were in life and where we were physically, and it's interesting to read, and some of those stories I hear and I know the basis behind them, and they're even more heartbreaking, and it was beautiful to read and also very difficult. So, and I always get the question, well, do you read your father's stuff? And so the answer is yes, but there's a lot of layers for me that go with it, and also a lot of things where you realize that when the time comes, when there's nothing left but the work, that there's a deep connection there that's hard to kind of describe. But all of this time with pandemic gave me the opportunity to go back and read those, and also doing some research for some projects that he and I have coming out together. I wanted to get to know the characters a little better.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a wonderful tease.
Yeah. And that's it's there, let me tell you.
Tease. But I was going to say, though, also the second Burke novel, Striga, which is Italian for witch, is so good, Kasey.
I have it. It's next. It's next.
Oh, it's so good. And the first time me and your dad were driving around Manhattan together, the second time I had met him, actually. But when he came into town, when I had produced Bob Bizarre Hands, we're getting off the 59th Street Bridge, and we're coming around, and I said, every time I read Andrew's stuff, I look around and I look at these beautiful buildings, and I say to myself, what happened in the basement of that building over there?
Oh my God.
And because Andrew, the way he writes about, New York City is just as much a character as anybody else is in those books.
Yeah.
And Andrew's New York City is
dark.
Yeah, it's dark. And it's funny because he said that, when Flood first came out, the New York Times was like, obviously, he goes into the realm of fantasy with how horrific the events portrayed in this book are. And he's like, I'm toning it down, man.
Yeah. They would never say that in a review now.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't, because he's proven,
Yeah, he's spent his life showing them, the monster behind the curtain, right?
Hell's yeah. Yeah, the circle of trust, right?
Yeah. No, it's so good. It makes me want to get going and start reading it,
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's
in a box. I got to get the box.
and what an incredible cast of characters too.
You know what? I convinced myself when I was reading Flood, and totally out of no reality, and I intend to ask him, but I convinced myself that Max was sort of like a connection to my dad.
Kind of, sort of. I could see that.
I don't think that's real, but I'm like, maybe it is. I don't know. I need to ask him.
There is also Vale's Visit, which is, Vale is a thinly disguised version of Andrew.
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, just confession, I've never read Belle's Visit.
Oh, it's really good. It's your dad writing Andrew defending Leonard Pine in court. What could be more fucking entertaining than that? We didn't mention, for those of you that don't know, Andrew Vax is an attorney who represents only children and youths who have been physically and sexually abused. He was a warden of maximum security juvenile prison. He served with the Red Cross in Biafra.
Yeah.
And his wife, Alice Vox, I should say, was the Queen's assistant district attorney that founded the Special Victims Unit.
Yeah, I'm actually reading that book for
sex crimes. I'm guessing
sex crimes. Yeah, so I'm narrating it, which is.
Oh, you're doing a narration of that?
I'm doing the narration, for Sex Crimes Then and Now, and it's the hardest work I've ever done, and I'm just reading it, so I can only imagine them actually doing it.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it's taking me a lot longer than what it should, just because the content is, as you can imagine, so tough. And I was surprised they asked me, since it's my accent with the story from Alice, but Andrew, he said, we don't care as long as you can tell a good story. And I thought, well, let's hope. And so
you can.
I've got that extra pressure, but man, I feel I owe it to them to do it right. And so I'm doing it slow, and I'm doing it in the best way that I can. So that's another project that I'm working on right now.
That is so spectacular. And a bunch of years ago, I had mentioned to you the possibility of doing a stage reading or doing a production of it's a